Why are hardcore Formula One fans so pressed about these new engine regulations? For me, the biggest problem isn't necessarily the fact that the lap times are slower. That's not a big deal. Being a little bit slower over the course of a lap doesn't really ruin the racing. What ruins the racing to me is the fact that you have turn 9 and 10 at Australia, and they're just rolling into it. Like I watched, I looked up to compare the 2025 pole lap, and dude, they are just absolutely like, maybe, I don't know, I think a little bit of brake, just drop a couple gears, chuck it in, like hardcore on the edge of grip. It's raw. It's what aggressive driving should look like. And when I saw this year's onboard, like looking at George Russell, he's decelerating a lot because of that clipping, or super clipping that they're calling it now. He's kind of just rolling into the corner. It looks more like a noob at a track day than the pinnacle of racing, especially for like a single push lap. This is qualifying. This is pole lap. This is supposed to be the fastest lap of the weekend. It was 3.5 seconds slower than last year's pole. Which, I mean, again, like the time itself isn't really the issue, it's the aggression. Like every major braking zone on this track, which there aren't many, but they're not braking from like max speed, you know what, to be fair, let's look up the 2022 Australia pole lap, because that was also the beginning of a generation. I've seen a lot of that online. People are saying that it's not fair to compare this year's car to last year's, because last year's was the end of a generation, so they're going to be the most advanced, which there might be some fairness to that. I don't think that these reliability problems we've had this weekend are going to last throughout the whole season, but yeah, they don't have the telemetry thing here, so I can't tell if he was braking or not, but he grabs 2 gears and turns in, and you can just see with the way the steering wheel is moving that the car is like way on the edge of grip. And then you compare that to this year, 2026, George Russell, and this isn't a dig at the drivers, because it's really not their style or the way they're driving it or anything they're doing. It's just the way the cars work with that battery running out of power before the end of the straight. So Russell, he's still flat out actually, but the car is decelerating because it's losing the electric power. So it's dropping, like, I don't know. They say it's 50-50, but I don't think the electric motor is making 500 horsepower. So Russell, he's going down the straight, he's flat out. And then at some point the electric motor cuts out, or it stops driving. It stops accelerating the car because it runs out of power. And they say that it's 50-50, but something seems odd. I don't think that the electric system is producing 500 horsepower. It might be. I might be completely wrong. But either way, it's losing a lot of power because you're losing the electric assist to the engine. And then what happens in the second phase is he starts getting the super clipping, which is where the motor is almost acting as an alternator to charge the batteries. You can think of it like that. In a road car, the alternator runs off the belt, so it is putting load on the engine just to run the alternator to keep the battery charged and to power all the electronics in your car. That's basically what's happening here, but at a super level. So they're taking the MGUK, or the drive motor, they're using it to generate electricity, which is loading the engine and even further decreasing power, which is why we get these crazy decelerations at the end of the straight. That's what's going on, but why are the old school fans so upset about it? Like I said with the previous laps, like, we're used to seeing drivers just absolutely send it. I mean, we've seen Leclerc, like Miami a year or two ago, I can't remember, just going off into the barrier because he's just pushing on it. He's 11 tenths. Schumacher was famous for having these crazy qualifying laps where he'd make a huge lockup and then somehow come around and still be up on the time. And to me, when I was getting into Formula One and racing, that's what I loved. Like, I mean, I loved Schumacher. I loved like the raw aggression, like full fuck it, like, 11 tenths. I don't like this conserving stuff. And I know no matter what kind of racing we're watching, there's always going to be some level of management going on in the race. Otherwise, the race, all the laps would be close to the pole time, which has never been the case at that level of racing. The only place you'll see that is maybe like something like karting in certain categories where the tires aren't really going to be overheated if you push the whole time. So that's nothing new, but the problem is when you're having to conserve on a single qualifying lap. Now, this is a minute 20. They were running, I think pole this year was like minute 18, 118.5. So you're telling me that this car cannot produce full power for under a minute and a half, less than a minute and a half. We can't have the car going full speed, full power, full performance for even a minute and a half at a time. That to me is like an absurd level of conservation. Like a minute and a half, dude. I can't believe that they made Formula One cars that literally can't do a full lap without having to conserve. And whether it's tires, which we have had that in the past, and I think that was fixed. Like everyone saw that as a problem when, you know, you had to conserve in sector 1 to have tires for the end of the lap, or vice versa, depending on where you really needed the grip. What I want from Formula One, and what I think a lot of these other hardcore old school fans are wanting, is to see the cars being pushed and driven closer to their limit more of the time. And rolling into the corner like that, it's kind of like a rental cart looking thing, or like I said, like a beginner at a track day where they're just nervous. I mean, really all the braking zones, you can see it, the car, you could hear it decelerating well before he's on the brakes. And that's kind of, it's not gritty, it's not edgy, you're not getting the drivers, the car is not on the limit because it's already slowing down before you even have to hit the brakes. One of my favorite parts about watching pole laps and lap record onboards was that crisp, like full throttle to full brake transition. You can hear like, like it's just, I don't know, like I have to try so hard not to do that at every like U-turn under a highway that I drive through. It's just addicting, like that full gas, full brakes. And I, for one, am a little bit bummed that we're not getting that. But I'd love to know what you guys think. My dad actually is an aerospace engineer, and he is like, oh, they're driving the car as fast as it can be driven. And I do get that. Like I'm not losing any respect for the drivers. They're doing what they can with the equipment they have, and that's all a driver really can do. But to me, I just think the equipment is where the problem lies, because that's not the kind of racing we should be watching in Formula One. But anyways, you guys agree with my dad, or do you think this is bogus and hope that it gets fixed as soon as possible? And subscribe to my channel for more driver enthusiast focused content like this.